You are watching Morning Musings with Reinhard von Hennings, chairman and founder of Bridge House Law in Charlotte, North Carolina.
My flight is delayed. What can I do? Hello, this is Reinhard von Hennings. The US Department of Transportation launched a new initiative aimed at introducing consumer protections similar to those of the European Union. My Aperol Spritz morning musing about passenger rights under European Union laws a few weeks ago now seems to be relevant for another reason. The US is following the EU example. Really? So let's take a look what is proposed. The proposal will include a compensation for delayed flights. The move comes from President Biden and Transportation Secretary Buttigieg, which announced a plan to introduce new reforms for stranded passengers. The suggested rules include compensation for stranded flyers, their expenses, which would extend a compensation claim for certain travelers. Airlines would be required to compensate travelers for a controllable airline cancellation or significant delay. And that's now a verbatim quote, including meal vouchers, overnight accommodations, and so on. With meal vouchers, we may be back to the Aperol Spritz musing from a couple of weeks ago, where, as you may recall, the question was, is Aperol Spritz an expense which needs to be covered by the airline? And the answer was no. The model is different from the European Union's model. It falls short a little bit, which requires in the United States a significant delay. Trade groups such as Airlines for America are now pushing back. They are citing the need for safety reasons in a delay or a cancellation of a flight. They argue that punitive regulations like this have no impact on the level of flight delays and cancellations. The International Air Travel Association, also known as IATA, which canceled and called for regulations in the year 2022, made similar remarks, claiming most situations should not be covered as weather is responsible for the bulk of those delays. But here it comes down to a different question. Biden argued that the government had given assistance to the airlines to make sure that the airlines continue to fly. But now the delays are a part of a major frustration. Should not the government have a reasonable expectation that things are done in good shape and things are done properly in order to make sure travelers make it safely and in time? So let's compare this with rules in other parts of the world. In the wake of countless incidents of delayed flights, the European Union has set rules to protect passengers from being left or stranded at airports. The Flight Delay Compensation Law outlines guidelines that airlines must follow when passengers experience a delay or a cancellation. Under the European law, passengers whose flight are delayed for 3 hours or more are entitled for compensation of 600 euros. Additionally, if the flight is delayed for more than 2 hours, the airline must provide free food and drinks as well as access to communication channels. If the delay involves an overnight stay, the airline must provide accommodation and transportation to and from the hotel. This regulation applies to all flights departing from European airports, regardless of the airline, as well as flights departing from non-EU airports and arriving into EU airports, as long as it is a European Union-based carrier. So if an American airline flies to Europe and there's an issue, it does not matter. If an American airline departs from a European airport, it matters. So the United States and the European Union have different standards. The European Union has set a very high standard for air passenger rights. The United States Department of Transportation has introduced some rules, but under the DOT regulations, airlines must provide passengers with updates on delays, must provide free food, water, and restrooms for any delays which are over 2 hours. And additionally, if a passenger is involuntarily bumped from a flight, they are entitled for compensation up to $1,350, all depending on the length of the delay. Let's look into Canada. The Canadian Transportation Agency, CTA, has introduced regulations to protect their passengers as well. These regulations have a minimum standard which airlines need to provide. Again, missed connections, delayed flight, lost or damaged baggage, similar concepts. And the Canadian authorities now provide compensation for up to 1,000 Canadian dollars for any delay or cancellation which was within the airline's control. Weather clearly would not be the case. The critics of the flight delay compensation, of course, argue that this leads to raised ticket prices. Airlines need to be more careful. They cannot be so cost crunching. And because of that, they need to have extra airplanes available, extra support staff available, which in turn hires the ticket prices. Despite all these criticisms, passengers seem to appreciate the European flight delay protection laws, as well as that passengers have a high level of confidence in booking the flights, knowing if something goes wrong, there is still customer service available. So let's take a look at the argument. Will this rule endanger the passenger safety? Meaning, will planes leave under unsafe conditions so airlines don't have to pay the fines? There is, first of all, no evidence to suggest that requiring airlines to compensate passengers makes travel less safe. Safety, as always, is the highest priority, and airlines are required to meet strict safety standards. The European Union law and the other laws all over the world are designated to keep airlines accountable for delay, but safety standards are always met. Safety standards are a different animal. So if airlines were to fly an unsafe plane in an unsafe condition, it would be a violation of airline safety regulation, and there are serious consequences, fines, or even the loss of the operating license. Safety is not something which can be taken lightly. It's not something that airlines may compromise on, as they have to prioritize safety overall. So, in short, there is no evidence that requiring airlines to compensate passengers will compromise safety in any way. Airlines are required to be safe to get started with. In conclusion, the United States Department of Transportation now takes a step to consumer protection similar to the European Union. This includes compensation for delayed flights. Of course, the airline industry is pushing back, so we will see how this story will develop. The European Union flight delay compensation has set a very high bar, and the American situation certainly needs to be measured against that. So if you compare the US proposed rules and the Canadian rules, they are weaker than the European Union laws. However, all of them provide protection for passengers, and that is good. As air travel continues to grow in popularity, it's likely that governments and regulatory bodies all over the world will come to different rules, to new rules, and to different regulations to ensure passengers are treated fairly and with respect. The new rules in the United States are still in the working phase. It remains to be seen what the final outcome is, but I'm curious to listen from you. How do you like those rules? What are your thoughts? Let me know.
Whether you're a private citizen, an international business leader, or simply someone eager to stay on top of the latest news, this book is a great way to get caught up on the most recent developments in the worlds of international business, tax, politics, and social affairs. Go to morningmusings.com and order your copy today.
Thank you for joining us today. If you would like more information about Bridge House Law, please visit our website at bridgehouse.law. Before you go, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more up-to-date content. Bridge House Law, business-minded, client-focused.